Bronzebird, peace. Like and subscribe before I begin. So I just wanted to make this video only because I like to express my mind on different topics and give my opinion and where I sit on the threshold of what is it that I think about the worldview and what do I think, especially towards so-called Black people, especially so-called Black men. Now, having an understanding which has happened with this election day, my opinion stands to hold. Um, I believe I'm very apolitical when it comes to it because I understand the powers that be elects those. You're hand selected. It doesn't really matter about your votes and stuff like that. And this is something a lot of so-called Black men were having a conflict with so-called Black men back in 2020, so-called Black women back in 2020, in which they started to understand that. And they did a lot of these bullshit campaigns of trying to get so-called Black men to vote. They used rappers, they used strippers, they use everything fathomable in order to invoke the stereotypes of so-called Black men, and especially so-called Black women, in order for them to vote for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, in which they succeeded anyway, because all it was, all of that, and even if they weren't directly saying vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we knew that when they was double speaking, that they were telling you to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But today I thought about this because of the recent results of the election. In Virginia, they had the lieutenant governor as a so-called Black woman be elected. In New York City, we have our second so-called Black mayor by the name of Eric Adams, who will be inaugurated in January of 2022 after Mayor de Blasio, which of course I can have an understanding personally where I analyze and I come to the solution that especially cities like New York are very democratic, refuse to be Republican, very democratic and very liberal, of course, ciphering in that Luciferian energy as much as they do every single chance they get. Now, I can go into my personal reasons of why they chose Eric Adams, but I won't down another so-called Black men on this video. I'll try not to, because I have an understanding that I do want to see so-called Black men win. Of course, I love to see so-called Black women win also, but of course we have an understanding in society that the so-called Black woman reigns supreme over the so-called Black community, quote unquote, because of the fact of the matter that it's upheld by the matriarchy and whatever you want to call it, because they're fulfilling the whole entire prophecy of the mother goddess. Now, this has been expressed by other YouTubers, because I won't lie, like I still listen to other YouTubers and give my perspectives through that and formulate my own opinion on that. But getting to the point, the election day made me think about a lot of things. It made me think about the whole entire Kamala Harris thing and about how she double speaks all the time, and just the fact of the matter that they're using the women over the men, solidifying the point that men are being put down into this whole entire whole role of being the demonic force in society, which is not true, right? And the thing about it is they go along with this whole entire idea about patriarchy and about destroying the whole entire thing of white supremacy and all this other stuff, which builds into the point of creating the whole entire new world order of communism. And this is the stuff that they really want to put out there for the general public. It goes deep into politics, why they want to put women more into those positions to rule over you men, especially you so-called Black men. You understand? Everything is a reason for it. And understanding that, we have there is a so-called Black man who's going to be in charge of New York City come 2022 is still upholding the fact of the matter that it's going to be the relationship. If it was the results that came out, because I didn't correctly get all of the results yet, but he's still going to have to report to a woman in order to make sufficient decisions and work with a woman in order to contact what's best for the city and what's good for the state. There was videos that I was going to do today, but I can't find the videos today, but it was going to be along the odds of why I have the complex mindset and I'm trying to understand the psychosis of the so-called Black man who is liberal versus the so-called Black woman who is liberal. It seems as if the so-called Black woman makes sure to retain her position, and that the so-called Black man who is liberal still upholds the so-called Nubian queen type of ordeal when expressing his thing about what's best for the so-called Black community, instead of the so-called Black man being on his own goddamn square and understanding that it shouldn't be like that. And which, of course, he'll be called misogynist and all these different things, but the man has to lead. And unfortunately, because the so-called Black man has lost the battle, now he has to deal with the so-called Black woman's liberalism whims. And so I'm going to share my screen just to show you exactly what I'm talking about. I have a couple of videos to really give my preface into this, and especially the first video is going to be via Kamala Harris in order to stretch my point. And I'm going to use a couple of more ideas to give my ideas about the so-called Black men in forms of politics. So Pete. Fair use.
I am honored, as is the president, to have invited and to have received these guests to the White House who are national leaders on so many issues, and in particular on one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issues that our democracy faces, which is these concerted, intentional efforts to deprive the American people of their right to vote. I invited, along with the president, these leaders so that we could have a candid conversation, so that we could talk about who is being impacted, how they are being impacted, always with a context that is historical in nature, understanding that so much of this is not new and is going to require us to be tireless and committed and vigilant in fighting for all people's right to vote.
This is the thing about women like Kamala Harris, who's a piece of shit at the end of the day. I don't hold my tongue for nobody. Kamala Harris has always been the one to sit up there and forget about so-called Black women, but for some odd reason, because so-called Black women want to hold the racial antic amongst women and have the whole entire thing of the sisterhood invoked, they will allow Kamala Harris to speak with them and give off this notion like she's doing it for them, but she wants to do it for the so-called American people. You understand? The thing about it is she's going to double speak. She's always double speaking these conversations, and so-called Black women fall into the pit just because of the fact of the matter she has some type of Black in her. You understand? That's the whole entire reason why they even had this meeting. And Kamala Harris isn't stupid. You know, I know a lot of people might think that, but Kamala Harris is smart. She's marketing well, just like Joe Biden marketed well. He just had to cover his ass with that time when he was with Charlemagne the God and sitting up there talking about, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black. He knows what he's doing. He's using the so-called Black woman to be the voice of reason instead of the so-called Black man. You're not useful, so-called Black man. Especially when it came to the elections, it's the same exact thing. They will make sure that they will honor the woman before the man, okay? And especially if you see the lieutenant governor. Now, I would imagine that you're gonna have a bunch of Instagram posts, Facebook posts, YouTube videos, and reaction videos about how they're gonna keep bragging about how the so-called Black woman is lieutenant governor. Oh, this is a game changer and all this other stuff. Oh yeah, we're moving Black girl magic and all this other stuff. And then still giving more credence to someone like Lori Lightfoot, which is kind of hard right now because I know that there's people out there, and if you're listening from Chicago, peace to you. But people out in Chicago are sick and tired of Lori Lightfoot. You understand? So it's just funny to hear this. And you know, she's gonna bullshit her way through this whole entire conversation. So Pete.
I look at the leaders that are at this table who are also women and also Black women, and I see Sojourner Truth. When I look at the women at this table, I see Ida B. Wells.
See, and this is always the funny thing about these politicians, man. This is how you know they're full of crap. They always want to be able to pull on the emotionality and just use random so-called Black figures through past history in order to get an engagement and feel the closeness to especially so-called Black women. You understand? She would say Harriet Tubman. She said Sojourner Truth. She's gonna say Minnie. She's gonna say anybody else out there. Alice Walker. I don't know. I mean. Any other public figure, women from the Black Panther Party, Ashata Shakur or something like that. Maybe not Ashata Shakur because she was like the revolutionary, but you know, more women out there. You understand what I'm saying?
Amelia Boynton. I see Fannie Lou Hamer. I see Constance Baker Motley. These are the modern versions of those great women who all Americans have the blessing and the benefit of standing on their shoulder. So this meeting has been a meeting and a discussion among leaders who are national leaders, who are American leaders, about what we must collectively as a nation do to stand up for our democracy. You know, yesterday, I hosted the Chancellor of Germany in my home, in the official residence of the Vice President of the United States. And we discussed our collective responsibility to fight for democracies around the world. And in the context of that—
which is only a smokescreen of takeover. I don't believe at all they want to fight for the democracy around the world. Of course, they'll uphold that whole entire globalist agenda, but at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about takeover, it's about rulership, taking whatever resources they have and making it into something. And the thing about it is, later in this video, there's gonna be a man that's gonna call out Kamala Harris at one of these meetups she did in the South Bronx, in which, you know, talking about the infrastructure and talking about how they're doing deals with China, of course, because the fact of the matter is, China is up there in the game. It's the world power. And then it's just gonna be all this other stuff out there in which it's about the so-called white rulership going along with the Asians because of the same lineage, you understand? This is what it's always about. And let me just say this on a personal note. Every time you're gonna see, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people notice this. I don't really need to say it in case people don't know. Anytime it's gonna be politics and when they're gonna offer a position to a so-called black person, a high position like a vice president or presidency or, you know, anything higher to that caliber, it always has to have some type of so-called white lineage in it. That's the reason why Kamala Harris is on the fence right now, because it's not just the fact of the matter that she's allegedly have so-called black, she has other lineage, if it still requires some type of so-called white in it. You understand? That's what always happens. So people always, it's always that whole entire rubric. They'd be like, okay, you know, we have a so-called black person. No, they have a half so-called black person, and then it's always a so-called white lineage. But I know a lot of people speak on that, especially so-called black people. But that's what's gonna always happen, as long as we are in this period. You know what I mean?
Conversation of voting rights in America came up. Because this is not only an issue for us as Americans in terms of the ability to exercise our voice, our rightful voice in our democracy. This is also an issue that is about America's standing in the world and whether we can continue to hold ourselves out as a democracy and therefore a leader on the globe. All of these issues are present at this very table in the Roosevelt Room right now in the discussion that we have had. And I want to thank Melanie Campbell and every one of the leaders here for all that you do every day, and this discussion will continue. Thank you.
Madam Vice President, Madam Vice President, you brought up the issue of history. Is this that LBJ moment on voting rights? Are they making you do it, or making Republicans in Congress do it? When it comes,
They ain't making her do shit. She's doing what she wants to do and making y'all believe she's for you. She's not for you, so-called black women. She's using y'all.
comes to voting rights.
No one is going to make us do what we know is our right and responsibility, which is to fight for our democracy and fight for our rights every day of the week. And this is, let's be clear, not about any one racial group or gender group. This is about all Americans. This is not an issue about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about Americans.
And this is the thing, before I end this video, because I got to get to a couple of more videos to explain my point. The thing about it is that what I'm honestly understanding from this conversation, or just in general, the problem with a good amount of the older so-called black women in this conversation is that they're just merely trying to speak to Kamala Harris to get the needs that they want as so-called black women, which is not really needs, a seat at the table with the so-called white man, and thinking that Kamala Harris is going to do something about the voting rights and this, that, and the third, and give all these special policies to so-called black women, when Kamala Harris is like, fuck you niggas, for a lack of a better term. I mean, look, listen, this is just my honest opinion. maybe I might not be the smartest or brightest and stuff like that, but I can smell bullshit when I smell bullshit. You understand? That's just how I see fit. You know, and I'm not mad. If you want to critique me on that, then you can. You can go ahead in the comment section and say what you like. But getting on to what I'm saying, I wanted to reach more into this whole entire thing that happened October the 22nd, in which they had the whole entire initiative about Build Back Better. And, you know, there was one of the hecklers that went ahead and talked about what happened with the whole entire Hurricane Ida and about the infrastructure in this country. And there's a couple of tweets that you can see. Yeah, I mean, look, listen, a lot of people, look, it's the same thing they tried to pull in the 1980s. You understand what I'm saying? They always want to choose the Bronx because the Bronx is so bad ridden and it's such a high asthma rate and there's always problems in the Bronx and stuff like that in order to pull on the emotional strings of trying to fix these low-end communities and all this other stuff. So like I don't want to hear that bullshit about these politicians, especially Jeff Colton talking about she could have went anywhere, but she chose the Bronx. That don't mean shit. You understand? It don't mean not a goddamn thing. You understand? So I don't want to hear none of that. I just want to read one. Rep Jamal Bowman jokes that it took the VP visiting to finally get AOC to visit his district. Well, AOC doesn't give a damn about the Bronx like that. She's from Westchester. She's not from the Bronx. So I just want to get to the point of when they had a heckler come in and, you know, they was doing this whole entire conversation. Just people.
But right now, let's talk about the agenda that will include speaking to all people and allowing everybody to be heard, because that's part of what we want in our democracy. Everybody gets their chance to talk.
That's her favorite word, democracy.
And everybody gets a chance to be heard.
See that? And then you see the so-called black woman with the phone sitting up there bigging up Kamala Harris. I mean, I just don't understand why so-called black women don't get it. Yeah, they don't get it. They really don't. They really don't. But I mean, I'll say this last thing in regards to American infrastructure. It's just completely embarrassing, the fact of the matter that America, the US, that used to be very efficient on having the new age technology before other countries, is now lagging behind 50 to 100 years on certain infrastructures, right? Bridges is about like 117 years old to 120. The fleet of trains and buses will probably be like 30 to 40 years old and stuff like that. And the highways need fixing and stuff like that. The roads is rotting and stuff like that. And I mean, maybe she will have the initiative Build Back Better and stuff like that. I understand that Joe Biden has taken certain initiatives of addressing a lot of things that need to be fixed when it comes to infrastructure, but it's not enough. It's really not enough. So I wanted to stretch my point about why I'm at a standstill about the whole entire conversation about so-called black men getting into politics, where I agree that so-called black men should get into politics, but at the same time, the whole entire liberalism thing needs to go. And so-called black men such as myself, or so-called black men who knows what's up in this country, should be at the forefront than this guy that's on your screen. And look, listen, I'm not going to knock the brother because I understand his passion and his drive, but the whole entire liberalism spirit he has on him, that's the problem I have when so-called black men get into politics, because it's not realistic. We can address all of the thing about love and all this other shit, but at the end of the day, the so-called black man needs to understand that he needs to lead what is right for the so-called black community, him standing up for better education systems and all this other stuff, and more initiatives to help so-called black people, if that's his pitch and what he's trying to do. You understand? And bettering the community after that, if that's what the so-called black man is projecting himself to be a leader about. You understand? And that's why I still would say so-called black men should get into politics if that's what their heart desires, but you need to know exactly where you stand. You know, and the thing about it is you're gonna have to deal with the corruption and all that, of course, but you know, just give my perspective. Well, that's not playing, but just to give you a frontal view, there was a candidate that ran for mayor way back in 2021 who's a rapper called Paperboy Love Prince, who's from Brooklyn and all this other stuff. And, you know, I thought it was a gimmick, but the guy was serious. But it may not be the most effective way to give out my message, but I just want to give it out just because of the fact of the matter that, you know, I'm at a standstill, like I said before. So, Pete.
3 months away, and plenty of candidates they are still in the race for mayor. But you've never seen a candidate quite like Paperboy Love Prince. The Brooklyn native is running for mayor after challenging Nydia Velázquez last year for her seat in Congress. They're an artist, a rapper, an activist as well, and the owner of the Love Gallery in Bushwick. They say when it comes to their campaign, it's all about love.
The people need representation. The people need love. The people need energy. They need passion. They need people that are going to fight for them the same way they feel when they have an eviction notice at their door. They need elected officials that are fighting for them with that same energy. As a artist, I realized that how important fashion and culture is to this city. Our goal isn't to diminish that and to hide that. Our goal is to highlight that. So many people talk.
Look, listen, it's not the best representation of a so-called black man when it comes to politics, and I'm not trying to down the brother, but my point is more progressive strategies for so-called black men to get into politics, because let's face facts. I believe in my whole heart of hearts the so-called black man has lost, but for so-called black men to gain a consciousness and to get better back into the position they need to be as being the patriarchs of their own entire community or society, they need to extract themselves from the liberalisms. Guys like this, that's full on into liberalism, I'm sorry, but it's just not gonna go anywhere, because you're gonna uphold the whole entire mother goddess spirit on you. And that is not something that brothers that is conscious and aware of needs to be involved in. It's not the best representation, but just deal with me here.
Talk about hate, and they talk about stopping hate. And we decided to stand up and say, when there's that.
Which means it's all a smokescreen about giving more rights to the LGBTQ community. Stop fucking speaking in codes. We know exactly what you're saying, bro.
Hate, the only thing that can fight it is love. A lot of people I talk to, they think of it as like some hippie thing that's not real, but I feel like it's the realest thing that we can have. One of the things that I've wanted to establish is a love ticket, right? So we can have more positive reinforcement in the community. That's saying that if you're out there and you're helping an old lady across the street and a cop sees you doing, hey, you're helping an old lady across the street, I'm writing you a ticket, a love ticket for $150 for doing something positive. Keep going. We need more positive reinforcement. We only have negative reinforcement. Poverty and housing are two crucial issues that are like happening right now. They're like fires that are burning as we speak that I want to grab some water and go put out right now. What I want to do is give out $2,000 a month to every person in this city. We get to choose whatever world we want in this society. We get to choose whatever world we want. Let's make this city the best city possible.
And like I said, not the best representation, but it stretches out my point. I gotta give the brother props for daring to be that one to take the stage of wanting to go ahead and be a fixture in the so-called community and whatever, even though it's a lot of liberalism undertones to it or overtones or whatever. Just the fact of the matter, when it comes to the so-called black man, my message to you is understand the bullshit, of course, but also understanding you have the power to make change and obviously be the one at the front line than to be at the back line and then in the back and being the one to listen and adhere to this whole entire liberalism thing, man. Because I'm sorry to say it, the whole entire matriarchy and the whole entire mother goddess thing is only going to cause for destruction. It's not going to move nowhere if you're trying to be progressive. Got to get off of that, man. Peace.